any NLU. So wait for that session. I think we will be done with our analysis in another 45 minutes. The team is working on the answers right now. And once we're done with the answers, we'll start the analysis. So first of all, congratulations, guys. I mean, you're done with your paper finally. And I mean, I think yesterday there was a lot of confusion regarding the whole Agnipath or Agniveer protest, where some trains were cancelled and everything. But then ultimately, I think you did not really face any hiccup. So anybody who faced any hiccup because of the protest and everything, anybody here? No one? All right. So at least the students here did not face any problem. Let us come to the paper part. Now, from the feedback that I have gotten from the different students who've come to the Lucknow Center, let me first in the next 5 minutes tell you what is the sort of feedback that I got, and then all of you can definitely pitch in and contribute. So, I mean, overall, I've been told that the paper was lengthy. Let's start with that. Was the paper actually lengthy? Let's start with Kanpur. Akshar, what would you like to say? What did you find the paper lengthy, Akshar?
So like it was just like basically lengthwise, I think it was somewhat similar to what we faced in 2021.
All right.
But the thing is that we got so accustomed to the length, like giving CP mocks and stuff like that, and like we have faced even longer passages in the mocks than the passages that we faced in the paper itself. So I think that was not a major setback for us, I think. That's my take.
All right. Next to Akshat, please introduce yourself. What's your name?
Mudit, sir.
Yes, Mudit.
Yeah, I sort of agree here with Akshat. The legal and the CR section were like, they were extremely short, like very short passages.
Yes.
And English was a bit more than Clat standards if we compare from the standards that Clat has set for itself. But for CP students, I don't think they'll find it much lengthy. Rather, they may find it to be small rather than lengthy.
All right. So I think I'm going to agree with Mudit and Akshat here, because the feedback that I have gotten specifically for the legal section is that the section was definitely not as lengthy as compared to the legal section that we get in our mocks. So even I went through the passages myself, and they were pretty straightforward passages, and they weren't lengthy, definitely not like the last year Clat paper. All right. Let's come to CP Chandigarh. So any specific section that you found lengthy? Let's start with the first boy. What's it? Please introduce yourself before you speak.
Sir, my name is Lakshay and I'm enrolled in CP Chandigarh. Sir, as per my experience, English was a bit lengthy and rest of the sections were par with 2021 paper. The exception was GK. Here and there, two paragraphs were outside the scope of the preparation. Rest, everything was with par with 2021 paper.
All right. It was pretty much at par with 2021 paper, except for maybe the legal and the logic section, which was relatively shorter as compared to the 2021 paper. Anybody else who would want to add to it? Yes, the one in orange. What's your name, beta?
Akshat, sir.
Yes, Akshat. How did you find the paper?
English was a bit lengthy, but the paper was good. Maths was easy. We can attempt 13 to 14 questions around.
All right, okay.
And able in a very less time.
All right, okay. So in fact, for the math section, the review that I've gotten was that you had all caselets. So there were no bars or graphs or charts or anything, only caselets. And the section was doable. Apparently, the calculations were not tricky and there weren't any glitches. So the maths team here at Clat Possible is happy because according to them, for the first time in the history of Clat, there's a math section with absolutely no glitches or no problems whatsoever. So they're really happy, and so should you. Anybody who was not able to come to the math section ultimately, because I did interact with a couple of kids at the Lucknow Center who told me that they couldn't attempt the math section. So anybody out of the centers here at Clat Possible, any student who could not attempt the math section, Delhi, Patna, Noida, you were able to attempt the math section? Yes.
I'm from Patna Center.
Beta, please introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Priyanka from the Patna Center, and I was not able to solve the math section. by the time I got there, I had barely 10 minutes left. So I instead focus on the CR section.
All right. And Beta, what do you think? Which section do you think you ended up spending the majority of your time, which is why you probably couldn't attend the math section? Was there a bouncer section which you felt prevented you from attempting the math section?
The English section was lengthy, but usually I do not score well in DI. That's one of the reasons I actually didn't do the DI section.
All right. Okay. We have somebody joining us from Clat Possible Allahabad as well. Can you please join the Zoom link and come online? Clat Possible Allahabad, can you please ask your center manager to have you in front of a computer and please switch on your camera so that we can interact with you in person over Zoom? All right. Coming to Clat Possible Delhi. So let's start with how you found the specific sections of the paper, okay? Now, I'm going to start with the GK section, which is, historically speaking, the most controversial in terms of what all was covered, what all was outside of what is already covered in your syllabus. So, Clat Possible Delhi. How did you find the GK section? Give a quick feedback about the GK section. We can start with the girl in green. Introduce yourself, please.
So I'm Ria, and I found the GK section to be a bit surprising because what we practiced in the CP mocks were the questions, very analytical ones, and some questions were even tough than what we would expect in the final Clat paper. But the questions that we got in the final Clat paper were not at all expected. The topics which were very expected, like Tokyo Olympics, like climate change, like CP26, not at all. In fact, we got one or two passages in which the scope of analytical guesses was very less. So GK section was definitely to my surprise.
All right, okay. Anybody else surprised by the GK section? Let's come to some kids from Noida. The girl right in front, please introduce yourself. I think for a moment, can you just take off your mask? I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but then your voice would not be clear. Yes, what's your name?
I'm Shruti Nila from Noida Center.
Yes, Shruti, do you have quick feedback on the GK section?
To be honest, I didn't find GK much surprising. There were a lot of familiar topics. Barely few questions were not, but there were questions that we have not really done recently. It was spanning almost a third topic and unexpected topics, but not really the ones we haven't covered.
All right. So Noida Center tells me, okay, this is something interesting, that the questions that you got spanned maybe a year and a half ago. So was it true? Like, was there any topic which maybe spanned, over and above 2 years that you usually cover, or 1.5 years that you usually cover for your GK syllabus? Let's hear it from Kanpur. Akshat. GK section, 2 feedbacks. One, the section was a bit surprising. And the next feedback that I got is that some of the topics spanned beyond 2 years.
Yeah, actually, it's what I would say is that Clat is now notorious for giving such type of passages which are out of the blue and you won't even see them coming. This happened last time as well. Some questions were like, really, you're asking this question? And even out of the passages which were well known, the topics which were well known, the questions were so one or two questions was so absurd, you won't expect that. So that is one thing. But
does something come to your mind instantly, like some offbeat topic or offbeat question that was a bit surprising and
Yes, sir, we have it.
So actually,
yes, who's this?
Hello, sir, I'm Ashi from Noida
Center.
Noida.
Yes, Ashi, go ahead.
So in the GK section, I thought the questions were very general, and the way we studied, the in depth we did, that was not really required according to me for this paper.
All right, okay. All right, so the questions were pretty basic. Okay, so this is like a lot of mixed reviews for the GK section. I've heard surprising, I've heard, GK beyond 2 years. I'm hearing basic questions. I'm hearing offbeat, absurd questions. So like, are you still zoned out of the CLAT paper and, don't remember what the hell did you actually do in the paper or something? Because this is very mixed. Okay, I'm going to take GK feedback from Allahabad. Yes, please introduce yourself.
I am Pranav from Allahabad Center.
That's it.
So the GK section, actually, it was like something we had not expected. Like 2 passages, something which I don't guess any more than 50 students would have been able to do.
What are these 2 passages? Okay, so there are 2 surprising passages that everybody agrees were a part of the paper.
Something like corporate social responsibility popping up in between of so many topics were there. But
all right, so basically you're trying to tell me offbeat topics, that there were events of way more importance. Events of way more importance, but out of all these important events, you just pick some random event which perhaps was not as important as the others.
And even when you picked up the expected topics like the Russia-Ukraine conflict was there, you were asking the spelling of Vladimir Zelensky's name. So like that.
Seriously, that was a question?
Yes, that was the question. They were asking the spelling of Vladimir Zelensky. I got confused. It is Volodymyr or Vladimir, or there is S in between.
Yes, does everybody agree? Was this a part of the paper where they asked you how to spell Zelensky's name?
Do I have a double white or a triple white towards the end of his name? How am I supposed to know that? And how am I?
Yeah, that is that is not easy. That is not difficult. That's, as Akshat puts it, that's a bit absurd.
Next, Shruti wanted to add something.
Yes. Okay, guys, one by one. Can you just raise your hand on your screen so that I know who's talking? Yes, okay. So CP Chandigarh, I'll just go to CP Chandigarh. Somebody wants to add something? Yes.
Sir, I think with respect to the GK section, there were some topics that we knew had a probability of coming. But yes, we have had a record with CLAT where we know that they can throw us some bounces. I really don't think that we were kind of surprised because we just knew that this is something CLAT can do. Whereas the remaining 5-6 passages, I think if you were to mark 4 questions per passage, I think that fine. And remaining 2 passages, which people are probably thinking were absurd, I still think a couple of questions in those passages were also doable. So,
all right, okay. So in toto, I think the general the summary of the feedbacks that I've gotten for the GK section, a bit surprising, a bit offbeat, but then majority of the section was pretty much doable and not a lot of in-depth question, surface-based questions. Basic questions. So, I mean, moving on to the next section, guys, let's come to legal. And the general consensus that I'm getting from almost everybody is that it was a very plain, simple, straightforward section. Right. All right. So let's start with Patna. No, we have somebody who's joined us from Dehradun. Shubhra. Hi, Shubhra. No, who's joined us from Dehradun?
Sir, I'm Ananya from Dehradun.
Yeah, Ananya, how did you find the legal section of the paper, Ananya?
The legal section of the paper was quite simple and it wasn't something that was completely out of the box. Even the miscellaneous questions were pretty doable. And the other questions were really basic ground principle of legal reasoning. So it was pretty doable. It was easy to be.
Yeah, this is the feedback that I've gotten. So we got a couple of passages from Consti, which, made a resurgence after not being a part of the paper for quite some time. So we had a question on secularism, Article 27. We had a question on rates. And then we had a passage on contracts, on mistakes. Then there were 2 passages from family law. And the good part is that even in the mocks, basically, I don't think there is any family law concept that you haven't already come across writing all the mocks and all the practice material that you've done. So a question on the laws of bigamy, and then again, another question on special marriage. Then there was this one question on international law as well, on the theory of dualism and monism. And we are still working on the answer key. I mean, look, guys, again, the section was very simple, but then after solving the paper, I do have a feeling that some of the options were tricky. Obviously you've done the entire paper, you've just come outside the center. First look, the section did come across as very easy, doable, not so lengthy. But then taking a closer look at the exact question, since I have the question paper on me, some of the options are really close and tricky. which is something that you will only find out later. All right. So let's just take the feedback from one more person from Alambag. Yes. Who do we have from Alambag? The first boy. What's your name? CP Alambag? Sadhna, can you make sure their mics are switched on? CP Alambag?
Yes, this is Pranav.
All right, so I'm going to come to Alambag in a moment. In the meanwhile, let's go to Patna. Yes, the boy. What's your name?
Sir, my name is Harsh Raj.
Yes, Harsh, a quick feedback about the legal section.
I think legal section in this paper was the easiest, arguably the easiest in my opinion. And
yes.
It was the least time-taking section. Some people might have an opinion on critical reasoning being the easiest and the least time-consuming, but I feel the legal section was very less time-consuming. And
yes,
most of the topics,
I do agree. The passages, especially as compared to last year's paper, the passages were much shorter in length at least.
And the language of the passages was also not very esoteric and difficult to understand. It was plain English, and any lay person could have understood the language. Unlike last year, where they used
where it did get complex, it did get a little complicated. I agree.
Yes, sir. And as you said that the questions and the options were tricky. Yes, I do agree that the options were tricky and very close.
Very close options, and especially like I was just going through some of the passages, some options were really close.
Yes, sir. So this is the general feedback from my side.
All right. Chandigarh, yes. Somebody who hasn't already spoken, a girl just joined us. All right, okay. Somebody from Chandigarh, yes, please go ahead. Your quick feedback on the legal section.
Sir, I think legal section was pretty much doable, but as you said, especially in two passages related to family law, there were 3 questions in which the options were pretty close, and
yes,
dug through the options to mark the correct answer. So I think we have to wait for the final answer key to comment whether it was moderate.
True. I agree with you. In fact, even the passage on even the passage on dualism and monism, looking at the options, I feel that they were pretty close, and you could have made errors in the legal section. So yes, does come across as easy, but let us wait for the final answer key to see how we fared in the section. All right. Moving on to the next section, which is, let's start with the math section. All right. Now, math section, let's start with somebody from Alambag. Yes, Ali.
Yes, sir.
Ali, am I audible? Alambag?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ali, how did you find the math section in the paper? Quick review. Were you able to attempt the questions in the math section?
This was not like what we expected. Actually, it was in a descriptive form, and what we give in the mocks was in the tabular form.
All right. I mean, you have practiced caselets. The only surprising element was that there were only caselets and you didn't really get any tables or charts or graphs or anything. So, I mean, I don't know. Is that a good? I really don't know a lot about the math section. Like, I have to ask you questions for the heck of asking questions. I'm asking it, but not a lot of idea about the math section. But like, was that surprising? Yes, Mudit from Kanpur. Having only caselets in the math section, did you find it all right, easy, surprising, expected more? What's your feedback?
Yes, I found it was expected, yes, but the questions, caselets were irritating, like 3 caselets, like you can just go on reading and deducing data.
Make the table on your own.
Yeah.
You have to do everything on your own. Like, they won't give you anything, they just give you information.
So basically, if you had very little time left for the math section, then it could have been problematic.
Then math section could have been tough. The biggest respite from the math section, I would say, would be that the questions were correct.
Yeah, the questions were correct is the biggest respite for the Clat Possible team here as well. Although they do say that for some of the questions, the calculations were a bit tricky, and there were specifically 2 questions that Amit tells me about. We will obviously take up those questions in the section-specific analysis. Noida, the boy, yes, the boy there, yes. How did you find?
Noida Center.
Yes.
The feedback regarding the math section would be, math section was pretty easy. All the passages were pretty much doable, and also like some of the questions had lengthy calculation, but some of the questions were pretty easy, so we could manage the time and we could also complete the math section.
All right, that's great to hear, the fact that because the biggest problem, when I sort of review the math section is most of the students have not attempted it. So, good that you were able to attempt the math section. Quickly moving on to the logical section. So speaking to the faculties here at Clat Possible, the review that I've gotten, the general feedback that I've gotten, there were shorter passages again as compared to the mocks or last year Clat paper, approximately 200 to 250 words passages. They were all easy reads is again another feedback that I'm getting. So nothing was very sort of out of the box or convoluted or complex or dubious or ambiguous, pretty easy. But again, the feedback. Now again, guys, both with the legal and the logic section, the general feedback that I'm getting from the students who've written the paper is that the section was easy and straightforward. However, when the faculties are sitting down with the questions and answering, they, again, for both the sections, feel that the options were really close. All right. So that might turn out to be a surprise element for the apparent easy and, straightforward legal and English section, logic section that you've gotten. So Sajal here at Clat Possible tells me that some of the options were really close, and you will only get to know later whether the one that you marked was the correct answer or not. Also the feedback that I have gotten was that elimination seemed to be the best strategy to approach the critical reasoning section for this year's Clat paper. Questions on specific detail, inference, conclusion, central idea, assumption. So the same drill, the same sort of questions that you've already been doing. So this is the general feedback that I have gotten. Let's see if you want to add something, starting with Kanpur. Yes, any one of you. Logic.
So, as you stated, that logical, the passages were small, so that was that felt like, okay, it's going to go easy. But when it comes to the options, it was very hard to eliminate a few options. It was basically the thing between, you'll eliminate 2 out of 4 options, and they're left with 2 options. And then it's a different ball game. You're like, this one is better, or this one is better. This one is better, or this one is better. So that happened. In
so basically, the question, the reading time for the question was very short, but the pondering time was higher.
Yes.
If the
all right. So this is one feedback that again some of the students are giving, that you were able to read the questions very quickly, but then you would spend sort of more time on coming to the perfectly correct answer for the specific passage. All right. Let's come to Allahabad. Yes. Feedback on the logic section.
The logical section was something like exactly opposite of the RC section. RC section was something in which we could spend like the passages were really lengthy. So we could spend like 3, 4, and 5 minutes on the passages, but the questions were something we could do in a minute. All the questions could have been done in a minute. And the logical section was exactly opposite. You could have read the entire passage in about 1.5 minutes. So, and there were some questions which tend to hold you on in the passage. So I think the best strategy was to leave those questions, because they were the ones that struck you over there, and because of that, the overall momentum got a bit hindered.
Disturbed. All right. So that's a very interesting take. So a student tells me that the reasoning, the RC and the logic section was quite the opposite, in the sense that you spend a lot of time reading the passages, but the answers you would get them in 20 seconds. And quite the opposite happened in the logic section, where you could read the passage in 20 to 30 seconds, but the answers took longer. All right. CP Chandigarh, would you agree with the, I'm sorry, CP Allahabad, what's your name, beta? I'm forgetting. CP Allahabad, what's your name?
So this is Pranav.
Pranav, all right. Chandigarh, would you agree with Pranav's take?
Yes, sir. I think I would agree with both Akshat's and Pranav's take, because because you were able to eliminate 2 options. So the wise thing was either you leave that question, or you probably take that calculated risk when you have already eliminated those 2 options. But yes, the moving and probably going through the entire section was more important than probably just spending a lot of time on just 1 or 2 or 3 passages. These
All right.
passages were like a good read and were like easy read. So I think 3 or 4 questions are pretty doable with like in every passage.
Okay, let me move on to Patna then. Patna, the girl in yellow, logic section. Quick feedback.
And for Patna CP sir, logical section is moderate according to for it is moderate, but
Guys, please no cross talking because your mics are on, so I'm not able to listen. Yes, go ahead.
according to me it was moderate. Passage were short, but in options we were second guessing ourselves. Basically, the options were confusing. Like we were at first glance, it would be like, okay, this is easy, but then once you look at it again, and then we were second guessing ourselves that if we have marked the correct answer or not. So basically,
Right. So a lot of second guessing because this is the exact feedback that I've gotten from the CR faculty here as well, that the options were very close and that students were bound to do a lot of second guessing while finally arriving at what should be the best answer. All right. So, all right. So obviously now your fate is, in somebody else's hand. I don't know if you're a believer or not. So I would just say somebody else. So let's see what the correct answers for those questions ultimately are. But again, logic seemed to be easy, but then options were tricky. Let's come to the lengthiest, and this is a general consensus from everybody that I have spoken to so far, that the lengthiest section was definitely the English section of the paper. All right, so English section, let's start with somebody from Noida. Yes, Noida. Quick review of the English section, general consensus, lengthiest section. Students ended up not exactly wasting, but spending a lot of time in the English section. What do you have to say about it?
So, in terms of the English section, I thought the passages were long, but the answers were pretty straightforward. We would spend around 4 minutes analyzing the passage, and we would almost get 20 seconds or 30 seconds on the question. And the English section was a little bit lengthy, but I would say that the other sections like legal and the math section really didn't affect the time management.
Are those burgers for you?
Yes, sir. I think they're not actually burgers, they are wraps. Maybe burgers are on the way.
Okay. Anyway, yes, let's come to Delhi. Clat Possible Delhi. Yes, English section, your review. Yes, the one in green. Can somebody else come forward? Anybody who wants to speak? Both of you, yes, both in green. Yes.
I was probably the 8th section. I know this is not the general opinion, but for me, English pretty doable. And I read the questions first, and after first, the answers were pretty straightforward. And even when we read it, they were easy to read. So I think English easiest passages, easiest sections of the.
Yes, even I agree. The topics of the passages in are very similar to us. Because we were for around 40-50 plus. It really helped us a lot.
Guys, can everybody hear the students from Delhi? Can all of you hear the students from Delhi? Karan, can you please check the Wi-Fi connection? I think there's some Wi-Fi glitch. I'm not able to hear the students from Delhi. Just check the Wi-Fi once. All right, I'm going to come back again, but to summarize what people from Delhi are telling, in fact, what everybody is telling me is that the passages were lengthy, but the answers were pretty straightforward. And there is this one feedback that I've now gotten from close to 25, 30 plus students, that some of the topics in the passage were pretty much exactly what you had already gotten or done before. Is it true?
Yes.
All right. And does anybody remember what these passages were like, what the topics of these passages were?
Sir, actually, there was a passage in which there was a speech from Winston Churchill. It was given, and that speech was as it is copied from one of the YouTube lectures of Clat Possible. I don't remember exactly, but I think so. We have put it. and that speech was word to word copy.
We should fight on the teachers.
All right. That's great to know.
Cryptocurrencies. There was one passage in English, I think, on cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrencies, we have done so many passages on in so many mocks, so we were very comfortable with the concept and everything we had.
All right. And were the passages hard to understand, or were they simply lengthy? That's it. Were they also convoluted and ambiguous, or just lengthy?
No, they were just lengthy.
Not convoluted, not dubious.
So some of the questions, if you are short on time, if like 2 minutes, 3 minutes for left in the paper, and you can just take up any passage and solve the questions, reading specifically one paragraph from that whole passage. If the question, you can locate the paragraph from where it is asked, and just by reading that one paragraph, you could have been able to answer the question.
All right. So that's again a very interesting take. Let's come to Chandigarh. Yes. English section. So general feedback, lengthy, but pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Lot of passages, topics already covered in the mocks. Anything that you wish to add to that?
It was pretty much doable in 30. We started with English section, and only one section were ambiguous, especially in the first passage, and rest of it was pretty much easy.
All right. Okay. So again, what I get to know is that despite being lengthy, I think the English section compensated by being straightforward and pretty easy when it comes to the answers. So we've taken the GK part, we've taken the legal part, the logic part, the maths part, and the English part. And we've also discussed what you generally felt of the whole paper. I would again say that the paper was somewhere between easy to moderate. All right. But guys, every year in the first 35, and this is historically speaking from my experience over the past 10 years, either these papers are really difficult where students come outside of the examination center and are pretty obvious that, this was a bouncer and there were a lot of questions which were undoable. But then most of the times, you have a borderline easy paper and students come outside and everybody obviously goes ballistic and they're like, the paper was really easy and the cutoffs are going to be really high. But that doesn't really happen all the time. Okay, let me tell you. We come out of the examination center, we have a good feeling about the paper, and everybody sort of goes cray-cray that, the cutoffs will be like 130 and whatnot. But, once the emotions simmer down, all right, once the emotions settle, once we start solving the answer key, once we sort of crack these things, like even when the section was easy, the options were closer, you ultimately get to know that the paper was not actually that easy. Okay. And the cutoffs are not going to probably be that high. So let me work on the cutoffs. Let me work on the, with my team on the section specific cutoffs and, therefore the cutoff for the total, for the entire CLAT paper. And we will have that session soon. Apart from that, guys, any note on the general test taking experience? Anything offbeat, anything weird, anything sort of, unexpected? The entire text. Let's quickly have a word on test taking experience. Okay, somebody from Patna wants to speak. Yes.
Yes, sir. So one of the most surprising things
What was your center? Can you tell me what was your center in Patna?
It was Chanakya National Law University.
Oh, you got to go to CNLU. Good. Yes.
So one of the most surprising things for me was that in English section, there was not a single passage which was picked up from fiction. Like almost every year, even in the sample papers, we get passages which have their roots in fiction. But this year, almost all the 6 passages were picked up from non-fiction sources. So I feel that the paper was, which made the paper monotonous because fiction adds a spark, it adds a different spark to the test taking experience. So I found the paper a bit monotonous and I was quite miffed because I had practiced fiction-based passages very assiduously and not a single fiction-based passage came in the exam.
Let's hope the odds are still in your favor. All right. Anyway, all the best. Kanpur, your centers and your test taking experience, how did it go? All right, guys, once more, please no cross talking. Your mic is on. Let me remind you, your mic is on. No cross talking. Yes, Kanpur.
Yes, sir. Okay, the test taking experience was no different. If anything, I would like to say that just be mentally prepared for 5 to 6 minutes of lost time.
Yeah,
with filling OMRs and all
Mm.
those points and everything. Just be mentally prepared for that. And yeah, it's mostly.
And were you supposed to sit with your masks on, or was that not a requirement?
No, so not at all. Like
there was no compulsion.
Like in fact, I
Alright.
gave my paper without my mask. So
Yeah,
I
even
just
I-
took it off and just kept it at.
Even I did that.
And I mean, I don't think whether you should be telling that to the world in an online session, but it's all right. Okay. Yes, Chandigarh, test taking experience.
I mean, I think, sir, that overall experience was good.
What was your center? What's your name? Come again.
So my name is Aditya. So we had
Yes,
a
Aditya.
SD college here in Chandigarh.
All right.
So the overall test taking experience was good, but I still think, yes, you should be ready for some disturbances here and there because of invigilator announcing a certain thing, or he probably scolding somebody because he did not. He or she
Oh God, did that really happen? Was
Yes,
there some
it did.
scolding also? Oh God.
Yes, it happened because somebody probably ruined his OMR. So I think you should be ready to face certain.
Yeah, for some distraction, you should always be ready for that. All right,
yeah.
let's come to Alambag. Yes. Alambag, test taking experience. Somebody is busy on their cell phone, hand it away. Yes, I think it's been snatched on my. Yes, all right. Yes, I am forgetting your name. Alambag?
Siddhi, sir.
Siddhi, yes, sorry, Siddhi. Siddhi, test taking experience. How did it go? What was your center?
Sir, one thing that did bug me was absence of thoughts in legal. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, this is the Clat paper, Siddhi. I mean, last year you had no consti, this year you had no TOTS, and then there are years when there is no contract. Then last year you had 4 passages on contract, which is why, look, I mean, obviously you shouldn't really give a damn about it. You're done with your paper, but then let me have my 2 minutes of glory. I mean, this is why we never obviously sort of pay focus on one section more than other, all right? So historically speaking, we've come across so many bounces, and especially being 10 years in the Clat test prep industry prepares you for everything, for any contingency. So there have been years when, you know, you've had no static GK, no current GK, you had all passages on consti, no passages, all passages on contract, few questions on criminal. So this is the nature of this Clat paper. It's like never balanced, but then, you know, in all probability next year for all this is never. This is what I tell all my future aspirants, for all the aspirants who are attending this YouTube session, never ever base your Clat preparation on the latest trend of the Clat paper. That's going to be a fatal mistake. You think TOT did not come, TOT is unimportant, let's skip that for next year. And for all you know, 5 passages on TOT come in the paper the next year. So never do that. For all the aspirants who are about to take the exam in December, let's hope some of you don't have to, but if you are, again, a suggestion or tip for you as well. Siddhi, anything else? I mean, anything else about the test center, about your experience?
I absolutely wasn't so dreaded about the fact that I'm giving the Clat. I was quite calm because I have been giving mocks, quite a lot of them, and
Yes.
the passages that came in the Clat paper were quite related to the passages that did come in the mocks about the mental health or human and animal relationship. So that was something that did do me some peace, and overall the paper was quite it was quite lengthy, but as far as English section is concerned, it was easy, and legal was expected, and GK was I mean, 2 of the passages were something
Yeah,
that we
GK,
did.
I have gotten mixed reviews, especially about these 2. I don't know what the 2 passages did to you in the examination hall, but everybody seems to be pretty upset and cranky and crazy over the 2 passages on whatever social. Ekto, that spelling of the name, and I think some of the questions have just made people upset here. But then yes, that's the general. Yes, Nikhil. Yes.
Abhishek sir, if I okay, so first of all, a big thumbs up to all of you for having attempted this paper with full confidence and presence of mind. Secondly, while you bring up the topic GK, I was just having the first impressions of all these students, aspirants who attempted the paper in Chandigarh. So at the same time, when they complained that two passages were simply out of the blue about topics that one could not even expect. At the same time, friends, all of them also were elated that there were certain topics and passages that were so easy. For example, Russia and Ukraine, the passage, it was like 5 out of 5. Again, same a passage about Denmark. So it was a mixed bag of things. If two passages were completely, you can say, they were like bouncers for you, so I would like to add that the other passages were pretty decent. And at the end of the day, we should all remember we are not here to score 150 out of 150. All we need to do is we have to score more than others. We have to get a rank better than others. So we'll do the elaborate analysis in just a while, as Abhishek Thakur sir said. But don't please ruin your mood because of a couple of passages here and there. This is just a part of CLAT paper in each and every section. And one more thing that Thakur sir, that I would like to add, like you said that the paper is very unpredictable and you cannot just take things for granted that you leave thoughts. You never know, next year might be a thought centric legal paper. Same happened, friends, with maths. Like Thakur sir again pointed out that never before have we seen that students were so elated. In fact, maths is one of those subjects that I don't know how many of you agree with me, but most of the students, when we ask them, their first impression about maths is that it is something that is not their strength. So even for students who don't find maths to be their strength, I have realized after this exam, the students overall were very jubilant that they were able to attempt a lot of questions from math sections. And in fact, since maths is such a section where you get to know whether you are right or wrong there on the spot itself, many of the students were pretty happy that by solving math, able to score, you can say, with an accuracy of 85% to 90%, even more.
Thanks, Nikhil. Thanks a lot. So I think our team is pretty much ready with the answer key, guys. And in another 10 to 15 minutes, we would be sharing our answer keys for the different sections of the CLAT paper. Now, first of all, again, I would congratulate all of you. Have patience in the process, have patience in all the efforts that you've put in to prepare for this exam. I mean, I may not have personally met everyone, but then I know that you have worked a lot, you have worked very hard, and whatever be the result, you did your best. Like I said, let's not be excited or let's not sort of be nervous that the cutoffs are going to be really high. You know, every year after the paper, people feel that the paper was quite easy, but then turns out it wasn't that easy, and the cutoffs were not as high as speculated. So let's just wait for another 10-15 minutes and we would come up with the final cutoffs for the top 5, top 3, top 10 NLUs, all NLUs, and party hard for the next couple of days at least. All right. You worked hard and you worked a lot. Let's hope that you have a great result, and I expect great selections from all the different centers. Thank you so much for participating in this session, guys. 10-15 minutes and we'll start with our paper analysis. Bye, all of you. All the best. All the best, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
वो कमिटी का नाम क्या है?